David Moyes turning up at Turf Moor was never going to pass unnoticed. The former West Ham boss watched a side he once led surrender a commanding position, but his presence carried another layer because Everton have transfer decisions to make and several familiar faces were directly in his eye line. The real significance sits behind why he was there. Then there was Manor Solomon. A debut goal should have been the beginning of a straightforward celebration, yet his performance immediately triggered memories of two creative players West Ham supporters know very well, while the result around him produced an entirely different emotion. There is plenty to unpack around that first impression. Moyes watching from the stands and Solomon announcing himself on the pitch give us two very different West Ham talking points, so stay with me as we get into exactly what matters for the Hammers. David Moyes was in the stands at Turf Moor as West Ham United opened their championship campaign with a 2-2 draw against Burnley. Max Kilman and Manor Solomon put Nuno Espirito Santo's team to goals ahead before two late goals from Zian Fleming brought Burnley level. It was a collapse Moyes witnessed from close range. That matters because Moyes knows this club and this squad environment extremely well. He led West Ham to their first major trophy in more than 4 decades before eventually leaving East London and returning to Everton. His Everton side are preparing for another Premier League campaign, but his free Sunday was spent watching his former club. The visit had a football purpose. Sky Sports commentators pointed towards one obvious reason. Moyes was watching veteran Burnley defender Kyle Walker, with speculation linking the defender with a move to Everton. Walker was asked about those links after the game and simply made clear that he has a contract with Burnley. That was only part of the picture surrounding Moyes. The other significant name was James Ward-Prowse. Moyes has a reputation for wanting to watch potential transfer targets personally, even when they are established players or footballers he has worked with before. Ward-Prowse falls firmly into that category after playing under Moyes at West Ham. His position in East London is particularly important. Nuno Espirito Santo has made his view on Ward-Prowse clear. The midfielder was loaned to Nottingham Forest when Nuno was at the City Ground, and he was later frozen out again after Nuno took charge of West Ham before spending the second half of last season on loan at Burnley. That history leaves little ambiguity about his standing. Ward-Prowse did get onto the pitch against Burnley, but only after Pablo went off injured. West Ham had limited midfield options and were relying on 2 youngsters, yet Ward-Prowse still did not start the match. For a player of his experience, that selection decision carried considerable weight. There is also fresh competition arriving. Arne Engels is coming from Celtic in a deal worth £22 million, while Tomas Sosik is described as a guaranteed starter when he returns in October. Ward-Prowse therefore faces an increasingly difficult route back into Nuno's preferred West Ham midfield. Everton are looking into the possibility of taking Ward-Prowse to Merseyside on a season-long loan. Nuno would not stand in his way if Everton make a formal offer because he does not see the midfielder as a starter in his side. That gives Moyes a potentially realistic route towards a reunion. And Ward-Prowse is not the only West Ham player attracting Moyes. Everton are also said to have interest in Aaron Wan-Bissaka and left-back El Hadji Malik Diop, who came on late against Burnley. Moyes therefore had more than one reason to keep a close eye on the Hammers. For West Ham, the Ward-Prowse decision is the most immediate one because supporters can reasonably see the value of experienced championship depth, while Nuno clearly has a different midfield plan. A familiar manager is watching, Everton have an interest, and the door would not be closed to an offer. That places the next move firmly around Ward-Prowse. If you think West Ham should keep experienced players like Ward-Prowse for the Championship Challenge or move on and fully back Nuno's new midfield, get your view into the comments and subscribe for more Hammers discussion. Now to Manor Solomon, because his West Ham debut gave supporters a glimpse of exactly why he was brought in. Solomon had previously replaced Crescencio Somerville effectively at Leeds during their title-winning 2024-25 campaign, and West Ham brought him in after agreeing an initial £5 million fee with their London rivals. His first appearance delivered quickly. Solomon became the first player since Jesse Lingard to score on his West Ham debut. Mohamedou Kanté supplied the assist after another impressive display, and Solomon finished from close range by driving the ball into the roof of the net. It put West Ham 2 goals ahead before Burnley's recovery. The reaction was about more than the goal. Solomon's movement, low center of gravity, and close control immediately reminded some supporters of Manuel Lanzini. Others saw similarities with Said Benrahma, another right-footed attacker who operated from the left. Those comparisons tell you what supporters noticed in Solomon's style. That is encouraging because Crescencio Somerville left a role that had to be filled. Solomon arrived with experience of replacing him at Leeds, and his first West Ham performance immediately produced a goal and visible attacking personality. The Tottenham connection from Solomon's past matters far less now than what he can produce in claret and blue. But the danger is allowing one bright individual performance to hide what happened to the team. Solomon scored, Kanté created, and West Ham were 2 goals ahead, yet Zian Fleming struck twice as Burnley fought back to take a point in Lancashire. The excitement around Solomon therefore came with a very familiar frustration. That frustration goes straight back to Nuno Espirito Santo. West Ham threw away 20 points from winning positions last season, and the Burnley draw added another 2. It was also the 3rd time in 11 months that West Ham had failed to win after going 2 goals ahead. That is why the substitutions attracted so much attention. Nuno did not have a deep attacking bench. Josh Ayala and Josh Landers were his attacking options among the substitutes, which limited what he could change. Even so, taking Solomon off for Joel Veltman shifted the balance at a stage when West Ham were protecting their advantage. Supporters were always going to scrutinize that decision. There was another enforced change when Pablo went off and James Ward-Prowse came on at halftime. That brings the 2 themes together neatly because Ward-Prowse was entering a game under a manager who does not consider him a starter, while David Moyes was sitting in the stands evaluating a player Everton may try to sign. His circumstances could hardly be more exposed. At the same time, Solomon represented something West Ham desperately needed on the pitch, a player capable of carrying an attacking threat and giving defenders a different problem. His debut goal was concrete evidence of his contribution, while the Lanzini and Benrahma comparisons reflected the technical qualities supporters believed they could see. That made his withdrawal even more noticeable. This is where the contrast becomes difficult for Nuno. West Ham had a new attacker making an immediate impact, but the match still ended with attention turning towards game management and another lead surrendered. Individual promise and collective control have to exist together if this side is going to become reliable. Moyes knows all about that question of control. During his West Ham tenure, he repeatedly wanted to remove the team's tendency to become vulnerable, and his sides were generally capable of protecting commanding leads. Since his departure, West Ham have again developed a damaging record from winning positions. Seeing Moyes in the stand only sharpened that contrast. None of that means West Ham should simply look backwards. Moyes is Everton manager, Nuno is responsible for this West Ham side, and Solomon, Kanté, Engels, and the rest represent decisions being made for a different team in different circumstances. What matters is whether those decisions produce something stronger and more dependable. Solomon's debut offers genuine encouragement because he did exactly what an attacking signing is supposed to do. He affected the match. He arrived after the departure of Somerville, scored on his first appearance, and gave supporters enough technical quality to evoke memories of Lanzini and Benrahma. That is a strong personal beginning. Ward-Prowse sits at the opposite end of the picture. He has experience, proven set-piece quality, and familiarity with Moyes, but his opportunities under Nuno have been restricted and Everton are considering a loan move. West Ham now have to decide how much value there is in keeping that experience around a championship squad when the manager does not view him as a starter. Aaron Wan-Bissaka and El Hadji Malik Diouf being linked with Moyes adds another dimension, while Kyle Walker was another player under observation on the Burnley side. Moyes was not simply watching an old club for sentimental reasons because the match contained players relevant to Everton's recruitment thinking. For Nuno, though, recruitment cannot become an excuse for the repeated problem of losing control from winning positions. Limited attacking alternatives involving Josh Ayala and Josh Landers deserve consideration, but West Ham still held a two-goal advantage before the game turned. The responsibility for fixing that pattern sits with the head coach and his players. So, the strongest positive to take away is Solomon, while the biggest warning remains West Ham's inability to finish the job. Moyes watching Ward-Prowse gives the club another decision to make, but protecting leads and making the most of players who can hurt opponents is the issue that will shape far more matches. Keep following the channel for clear West Ham analysis, and if you enjoyed this one, leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss the next Hammers discussion.